Hey Greg, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Um, I'm just gonna admit some of the speakers right now, and then we'll admit everybody in a second.
Sounds good. What's been keeping you busy?
Oh, great question. We just had a public forum in Delta County, and our Ag Commission meeting, so that was a pretty big lift. All right, we'll add in Anna. And Sam. Okay. Robert, are you good if I let everybody in?
Yep,
You ready to go? Okay.
sure.
Sweet.
And we're just doing, this is just Zoom meeting this time, right? Not webinar.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
I was gonna let everybody know about that.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. We're gonna give it a minute as people trickle in. All right, Robert, do you wanna get us started?
Yep, thanks, Marissa. Welcome, everybody. I'm Robert Sakata, here at the Department of Ag. Thanks for taking the time to join us. We are recording this meeting, just so you're aware, and we will be posting it on our YouTube channel for those people that can't join us today. Special thanks to Marissa Rudolph, our Deputy Director of Comms and Outreach, who's really been diligently working behind the scenes to put all of this together and many other things. So thanks, Marissa, for all your hard work. Um, we just so you all are aware too, we've changed the format. In the past, we were doing this in uh, webinar format, but we've changed it to meetings so everybody can just easily engage and join in. So if you have a question or a comment about any of the topics that we're discussing, please turn on your camera, unmute yourself, and just chime in because we really want this to be valuable for everybody that's here and joining us. So thanks for taking the time. So I guess if there's nothing else, Marissa, I'm going to open it up for public comment right now. We have public comment available here in the beginning. And just as a reminder, at the end of the meeting, we have time that an opportunity for everybody also to provide us updates about any activities or challenges that they're facing across the state. So if there's anybody with any public comment, just feel free to turn on your camera and come off mute and provide us your comment. And we welcome any comments at all. Well, with that, and again, since it's just wide open, we won't spend too much time waiting for people there because again, just feel free to join us anytime. Next on the agenda is update from the Colorado Department of Ag, and I'll provide that. In the agenda, which should have been a part of the meeting invite, and if you could put that link in chat, Marissa, I'd appreciate that. I provided a written report, and so I won't go into too much depth. I just got back on Sunday from being on the road for 21 days straight. I may have seen some of you on the road, traveling across Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, just attending many different meetings. Included a Council of State Governments West meeting that was in Utah. It's a meeting where legislators from across the West meet and talk about issues that they're facing. So, of course, as you can imagine, there was a lot of discussion about water, and I was asked to be there to talk about water and agriculture in the West and really feel privileged to be able to do that. Later on our agenda, we have Amy Ostedik from CWCB joining us to give us an update on the Colorado River, which I think is really timely with things moving pretty fast in that area. Also, a topic of discussion at CSG West was, of course, data centers and AI. So I was really thankful to be able to listen in to hear what across the Western states, what's going on, and the concerns and how people are approaching big data centers and AI, the impacts that they have on society and the benefits as well. So I was also able to present at the Colorado Western Association of State Department of Ag meeting in Flagstaff. Those are the collection of ag commissioners and directors of agricultural departments of states across the West. And again, as you can imagine, a lot of discussion about water, discussion about food safety, especially with the cyclospora outbreak that is going on across the United States, and how water relates to food safety. So really important discussions there. As I mentioned, I've included my written report, and you can see there that information about CDA's response to wildfires across the state. Really a huge thanks to our team at CDA that's been led by Dan Frazen, our state veterinarian, Dr. Maggie Baldwin, and the whole team for being there to help in the response to wildfires. At one time, with the Aspen leaf fire down by Pueblo, I think at the state fair, and the state fair team housed close to 1,200 or over 1,200 large animals at that one site. And so it's really important that the work that they're doing, and we're really thankful for that. Also in my written report, I included a link to the CWCB flood threat bulletin, because now with monsoon season moving in, as I drove up from Flagstaff crossing into Southwest Colorado, I could see areas where the roads, mud across the roads, and the flash floods now are hitting this area, and we're really concerned with what's going on with the burn scar areas. And that's why part of the focus on this meeting will be wildfire recovery and response. And I found that flood threat bulletin, I subscribe to it, get the every daily report about where the potential threats are going to be for flash flooding. Our Ag Commission met in Hotchkiss and had a public forum last week where a lot of the discussions were about drought, but also how important it is for each of us to step up on our communities to support each other during this very stressful time. So in my written report, you'll also see a link to our mental health resources. And if there's anything that we can do in your community to support that, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Marissa for anything that you need. And with that, I think that's it for my report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Otherwise, I'm going to pass it on to Greg Peterson to provide us an update from Kawa. Greg?
All right, well, thank you, Robert. Yeah, I've just past month been traveling around meeting with farmers and ranchers around the state, talking about projects and just hearing and listening to them. One small project that we worked with on Colorado Cattlemen's that is now finished up is at the Cattlemen's annual conference in June. We had a great opportunity just to have a lot of people in one location and put together a series of drought videos. And I will get a link of that up in the chat. And we are just interested in sharing these far and wide. So if that kind of content is of any value to you, just please, like I said, I'll put that in the chat, and where you can download those videos and just share them. And so like I mentioned, been traveling around the state a bit, talking to quite a number of producers, and just share things that I'm hearing and learning. It's gonna be a very big year for purchasing og water. I've worked with groups in the past, augmentation groups in the past on this, and just learning. It's just learning, especially in the South Platte. It seems most people are trying to be purchasing augmentation credits and then going to programs, hoping to go to programs like the CWCB's Emergency Agricultural Water Grant next year. And so just hearing more about that this year than any other year. And then also been just discussing future projects with people, and already really surprised. And it shouldn't be too surprising in a year like this, but just the level of interest that we're getting from producers to participate in projects, wanting to improve infrastructure. I think that a lot is gonna come out of a year like this year. And then also it's been heartening to go around and talk to people. And I mean, this has been a really tough year, but then also talking to people about how a lot of the lessons that we've learned from 20 years ago or more recent droughts are paying off. I mean, in Grand County recently talking with a group of ranchers out there and how this project that they started in the early 2000s after the last big drought, where they couldn't even divert water, and they essentially rebuilt about 8 miles of the river, and they're not able to divert their full water right at all, but they've all been diverting water, and I think and the project worked, and I've run across that with numerous producers in areas where um, one-off projects or group projects where a lot of this work that we've been doing is actually paying off, which has been really heartening to see. And I think that's about it.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I look forward to seeing those CCA videos because I really feel too it's important for us to document what's going on this year, like you said, so we can learn from the history of what projects we did earlier, how are they paying off, then also how can we support people in the future? What are the gaps, so to speak? So I guess one question I have for you then is because I know you do travel a lot and talk to the producers, is that infrastructure need. I've heard some reports where because it's so dry, they're seeing some failures that they hadn't expected in the past because the ditches haven't been carrying the water that they normally do. Are you hearing any reports about that as well?
Yeah, the most common things I'm hearing are, I mean, just being able to divert at low flows, and more people getting pumps put in to get water out of rivers. And that, yeah, just with the less push water or carriage water, all of a sudden, these larger systems are having a really hard time delivering water to everybody.
Yeah.
And maybe they've never gone into rotations or partitions like some systems, and they just don't have the experience to do that.
Yeah, that's where again, I think your efforts and hopefully Darka's efforts to maybe really share information among ditch companies. I think we can learn a lot from each other because, of course, along the South Platte and Arkansas, we've faced over appropriation for many years. It's not unusual for that ditch to go into sections, right? And so maybe we can be helpful in sharing some of that information. Also, but I'm also a little concerned that I know, like I've mentioned before, our farm, we fallowed 40% of our farmable acres this year. So I'm not going to have extra income to make those investments in improvements. So how much of a challenge is that going to be that people see the value in it, but financially we may be pretty strapped this coming year to do those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for you, Robert. I mean, I've been working on a number of grants with people, and I mean, the money is out there. It's not easy to access. And then actually been working on a couple of new opportunities. It's a whole new world for me is corporations. And a lot of corporations are really interested in offsetting water use for public relations, corporate social responsibility, and actually met with one yesterday that is work in Pueblo, and we might have a project with them next year, and that's a whole new wild world I've never really dealt with. And so I think there's opportunities out there. They're not easy to find.
Well, that's interesting. I know I attended a meeting on the West Slope once, and they had partnerships with, like you said, with PepsiCo or other organizations that, like you said, are trying to offset their water use with conservation practices. So, yeah, keep us informed in that. If there's ways that we can assist in providing those opportunities to producers, would love to be able to do that. Any questions for Greg? Hearing none. Sam, I understand, Sam, you're going to be stepping in for Kat and provide us a CWCB update.
I am. Yep.
Thanks, Sam.
Appreciate it, Robert. Well, for those of you who I've not met yet, I am Sam Stein. I'm the Deputy Section Chief for Water Supply Planning at the Colorado Water Conservation Board. I will keep this relatively brief, but just wanted to quickly go over the past drought task force meeting that was held last week. It was used to review the latest drought conditions and coordinate on the state's ongoing drought response. So as I'm sure a lot of folks have heard, we've got the North American monsoon starting to ramp up, but water year 26 still remains the warmest on record in the fourth driest through June. So still really experiencing really impactful drought conditions, as nearly half of Colorado remains in either extreme or exceptional drought currently. So the Drought Task Force discussed elevated wildfire and flood risks and heard updates from agencies on drought impacts impacting communities, agriculture, recreation, and wildlife, water supplies during the meeting, and discussed advancing recommendations to the governor on drought response through executive action. I'll just quickly go through the recommendations. The first one related to the greening government, which would create operational actionable resilience by expanding Colorado's greening government framework to require state facilities over a certain size to develop a water efficiency and drought response plans. The second related to state agency landscape and water use directive. So this would be shifting outdoor landscape water management practices also on state facilities to include identifying non-functional turf areas that can be reasonably adapted to dry conditions and withstand reductions in supplemental irrigations. This would also be looking to fix leaky or faulty irrigation systems and to, where feasible and safe, allow grasses to grow beyond the standard height to require fewer mowing. Third was relating to state agency vehicle fleet directive, which essentially would reduce non-essential water consumption for the state's fleet by reducing car washes, except when necessary to maintain transport safety, public health, or basic functionality. And the final one was to temporarily extend the state tax deadlines to waive late fees for businesses affected by the 2026 drought, including producers and businesses as well. So those were the four that moved forward. And I also just wanted to note that we are still really interested in collecting stories from around the state. So we have added a share your drought story link to engage CWCB. So really appreciate anybody who's willing to just share your on the ground impacts because it really helps us provide details to the Drought Task Force and provide just better support and direction. So I think, Robert, that's all I have for today, but happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Sam, for joining us. Really appreciate that. Questions for Sam? Sam, I think that Drought Task Force, the next scheduled meeting is, do you remember when that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to say it's August.
August 24th.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, the Drought Task Force webpage is, you can see recordings of the past meetings as well as the meeting dates and other resources that CWCB has available. So thanks, Sam, for everything that CWCB is engaging with right now. I think it's going to be really important. Let's see, just on chat, I saw that Marianne, thanks for your question about seeing the US Drought Monitor. I think Marissa put that link in there. I would take a note that it's interesting how you'll see in kind of northeastern Colorado is no longer considered in any type of drought conditions. But unfortunately, that eastern part of the state has really been hit by severe storms. We had a report from our ag commissioner from that area, and the hailstorms out there are literally chopping crops down to nothing, unfortunately. Talked to some of my friends in Rocky Ford area. They've got hit by severe storms. So we're thankful for the moisture, but unfortunately in eastern Colorado at this time of year, because of the heat, it develops into severe storms. So it just seems like you can't win this year at all, which is unfortunate. And I see Wendell, you put a question in there. I don't know, Sam, if you can answer this question at all. Any update on the release of the Bureau of Reclamation EIS?
Hey, Robert, I'm here.
Oh, great, Amy. Yeah, Wendell has to drop off, so if you wouldn't mind answering that real quick, that'd be great.
Yeah, good question, Wendell. And I feel bad because I accidentally lied to the Colorado Basin Roundtable about this yesterday. We had heard previously from the Bureau of Reclamation that they would be releasing the final EIS on Monday of this week. Obviously, Monday has passed and it has not come out yet, but we still anticipate it will be this week at some point. We're just not sure exactly which day. But if I had to bet on it, I would say it'll be midweek.
Great. What's the best way to keep up to date on that, Amy? Will it be on the upper Colorado River Commission website, or where's the best way to keep up to date? Because like I said, it just seems like it's minute to minute that's changing.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the Bureau of Reclamation's website is actually going to be the best place to look for updates on the NEPA process. I think that they have a post 2026 landing page that I'm happy to drop in the chat. But they're going to be the best source of information for the timing and all of that.
Great. Yeah, if you could do that, it'd be great. Any other questions, Wendell, before you have to drop off? Great. And Wendell, thanks so much too for all your efforts to host the Ag Commission and the public forum in your neck of the woods. It was much appreciated. Commissioner Greenberg, we just had a meeting this morning and she just relayed to us how much she appreciated your participation there. So thanks.
We missed you, Robert, but glad to do it.
Thank you. Well, Amy, I'll just let you continue on then since you're here, and that'll be great.
Great, thank you so much. I am going to try to share my screen if that's okay. Oh, I have to send a request. Okay. Is this the right one? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Well, I think I know many of you here, but for those I might not have met, my name is Amy Ostedik, and I am the Chief of the Interstate Federal and Water Information Section at CWCB. A lot of my work is focused on being part of the negotiating team on Colorado River interstate issues. And we've obviously had a busy several years trying to work towards a consensus agreement for the post-2026 operations of Powell and Meade. And I see James has a hand up. Do you want to jump in before I get started? I don't want to, if you had a question for someone else, I don't want to cut you off. No? Okay, I'll continue on. So yeah, we have been working for years now with our fellow basin states trying to reach a consensus agreement about how Lake Powell and Lake Mead are going to be operated in the post-2026 world. We say post-2026 because the 07 guidelines that currently govern Lake Powell and Lake Mead expired at the end of last year, but they're operational through October 1st of this year. So the best approach we believe, and I think everyone believes, is if there would be a 7-basin state, Colorado River Basin state consensus on what comes next. We have unfortunately been unable to reach that, but it's important to remember that this is all a NEPA process. So at the end of the day, Reclamation is going to have to select a preferred alternative themselves, and that is upon us this week. So just to dive right into it, I've had to change this slide a number of times because the process and the timeline has shifted on us just as recently as this week. But what we have seen in the last few months is a little bit more information from Reclamation about what we might expect in terms of a preferred alternative. They put out this preliminary preferred alternative, and we're analyzing that in June. I'll go over what was in that in a minute. But now, like I said, what we're looking at is a final EIS likely this week, and then a record of decision that will be followed shortly after that, and more details at that point likely about the next 2 years of operations at Lake Powell and Lake Mead. So like I said, the Reclamation has talked a bit about this preliminary preferred alternative that they started floating and discussing with folks before releasing their final EIS to get some input on the concept. And I want to talk about what this is and what it is not, because what it is not is a 10 or 25-year clear operating framework telling us exactly how Lake Powell is going to be managed. That is not what this is. What it is a 10-year framework that provides certain parameters within which every 2 years the operations will be set. So the parameters included here As you can see, includes PAL operations, a range between 5 and 12 million acre feet of annual releases from Lake Powell, lower basin shortages up to 3 million acre feet. And then you have these storage pools in Lake Powell and Lake Mead. In Lake Powell, that would accommodate, an upper basin contribution program if we set one up. And in Lake Mead, that accommodates intentionally created surplus, or essentially a water bank for the lower basin. The other important thing to note is that Reclamation acknowledges that their authorities are, as we are well aware, more limited in the upper basin than they are in the lower basin. The Secretary of Interior is water master in the lower basin. So we would hope to see a lot more details about how they're going to manage Lake Mead releases. In the upper basin, really the focus is the upstream initial units. So Blue Mesa, Flaming Gorge, and Navajo, what are the circumstances and what's the process under which we will determine how those reservoirs will make releases to help support critical elevations at Lake Powell. A really important note here, though, is that, and I think this gets confused on a lot of different levels, what we're negotiating, what we're talking about, what this NEPA process is about, is really Glen Canyon Dam and below. So it's operations of Powell and Mead. That upstream initial unit component, many of you are probably familiar with the Drought Response Operations Agreement in the 2019 DCP. This is going to be a successor to that. That's going to be a separate but parallel agreement. So in other words, that's not going to be part of the big NEPA analysis, but on a parallel track, the upper division states of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming are working on an agreement with Reclamation to work out that process. And the other parallel activity that the upper division states have committed to throughout this process is a contribution program. And I wanted to take a minute and let you all know what that is and what we're working on and what the next steps are and how you can provide input if you have some thoughts for the Colorado Water Conservation Board as we look to next steps. So you all, I'm sure, have heard us talk about a lot of different things with a lot of different words. You've heard us talk about demand management, the System Conservation Pilot Program, and all of these things looked at mechanisms to conserve water in various ways, but they're all really different as well. So this is distinct from that, but will build on what we've learned throughout all those efforts. So what is happening right now is that the Bureau of Reclamation has announced that it will award $100 million to the upper division states for just a near-term 2-year upper basin contribution program. Now, these funds have to be given to the UCRC, awarded to the UCRC by the end of September, and we have to start setting up this program. We have to hit the ground running in October, November. So the expectation is that we will start running a program this fall and getting prepared to run a program this fall. The UCRC, again, will receive these funds from Reclamation, but each upper division state is going to have to do work within our own boundaries because we all have unique laws and administrative frameworks and things like that we're going to have to work within to see what types of projects will work for us. So again, this is really building on a lot of stepping stones that came before. Some of you may be familiar with the Water Bank Work Group, started something like 20 years ago, maybe not quite that. But looking at mechanisms for conserving and banking water, again, different than what we're going to be doing with this program. System Conservation Pilot Program, we had a couple different iterations of that in 2015 to 2018, again in 2023 to 2024. The thing about that is that it created system water, so to speak. So all the water that was conserved in SCPP essentially stayed in the system. We didn't have a mechanism to protect it in Lake Powell or the upstream initial units. So in some cases, that water probably just flowed downstream and was maybe released from Lake Powell, for example. That's not how the contribution program is going to work, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We had the multi-year demand management feasibility investigation where the CWCB created 8 different work groups to look at a lot of questions and issues associated with the concept of demand management. I want to again draw a distinction here that demand management is really a term of art that was created in the 2019 DCP. It had very specific requirements, very specific uses of that water if we were to set up a program. Again, sets it apart a little bit from what we're doing this time around. The most recent effort that I want to highlight is the Provisional Accounting Memorandum of Understanding, and this was essentially an agreement between the upper division states and the Bureau of Reclamation about how can we as upper division states coordinate to account for conserved water and start to track how much of that water is getting to Lake Powell or another upstream initial unit so that in the future, in a future agreement, we have a mechanism to get credit for that water and to say that is water that shouldn't be released to the lower basin or that we should get credit for in some way in a post-2026 framework. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is because really we're trying to bring all of this together in the near-term contribution program and work out an agreement with Reclamation and the upper division states that not only accounts for that water like the provisional accounting MOU did, but also gives us credit for it. So this is water that would be to the credit of the upper division states, not system water like SCPP, and would create this upper basin credit or benefit in the post-2026 world. I'm not going to go through all this, but we, like I said, have done a lot of work on demand management, the concept of demand management. Again, it's distinct, it's a bit different, but there are a lot of parallel questions. So if anyone is interested in going back and taking a walk down memory lane on the demand management feasibility investigation, can drop a link to where all that documentation is as well. But I would point you to the July 2020 update, which is, I think, a couple or a few hundred pages long and really details the information that came out of the demand management work groups and all the discussions and questions that came out of that. Again, so all of this is informing where we're going next. I do just want to highlight it's a 27-28 program. This is a 2-year program that will start this fall. And on that note, we're going to be operating it within existing authorities. So the law presumably is not going to change in Colorado in the next few months. So we're looking at how we do this within existing authorities. We know that there are existing authorities that the state engineer has to look at moving water. So we know that there are ways to do this. We have some operational experience in that. But it's coming at us quickly, and for this first year, we are doing it within existing law. So I also just wanted to highlight, we've been doing a whole lot of outreach, gotten a lot of input, not only throughout the demand management investigation, but throughout SCPP, throughout all of it, and we've continued to try to get out across the state as we were implementing previous efforts, and still today. So we're trying to hit every corner of the state that might have some thoughts about this. But we've done a lot of outreach already, and everything that we're doing going forward is going to be built on that outreach. So where does that take us? We are right now trying to make sure that Colorado is prepared again to hit the ground running so that we can bring some of that $100 million of federal funds into the state of Colorado for this contribution program. The first step to doing that is really looking at what do we want to prioritize in this program? What are the criteria that we want to include? So based on all the previous work that's been done, based on a lot of input we've received, we've developed a list of preliminary draft criteria. I talked to our board about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to go back and talk to them about it in September and finalize the criteria. But in the meantime, we're taking input from anyone who might have some thoughts about this. So we're really trying to strike a balance here between hitting all the major input that we have heard and really taking a, we want to make sure that we are doing this very thoughtfully. We also want to make sure that we have enough flexibility so that folks can participate in the program, that we're not closing any doors that should be open. So that's the balance we're trying to strike here. A few of these are more programmatic criteria, like using federal funding for the whole program. It needs to result in contribution or credit under the agreement that we reached with Reclamation and the other upper division states, again, operating within the existing authorities. But a lot of these other criteria will be project specific and really looking at how do we make sure that we are providing opportunities for folks to participate while avoiding injury, doing our best to consider what secondary economic impacts might be and addressing those or avoiding them altogether, incentivizing environmental and multi-type benefit projects. So those are the things that we're looking at now. And we would love to hear from anyone who wants to provide input on this list. Our board would love to hear about it because the next step, like I said, is to go back to the board in September and finalize this criteria. I also anticipate we'll talk a little bit more about process and next steps at the board meeting in September. So feel free to listen in if you feel so inclined. But please, I'm going to be out across the state in the next couple months. So if people want to provide input, please feel free to do so. We've also created a specific email address. So if you guys are out and about and get questions about how do we engage with this, how do we reach out, there's a new email address that people can send an email to request that. In parallel to all this, we'll be working with the other upper division states and reclamation to formalize the accounting and credit protocol that will be in place for this near-term contribution program. And looking even farther into the future, and to maybe go back to the beginning, it's my hope, and I think everyone's hope, that we're going to, at some point in the next 2 years, develop a longer-term durable framework, a consensus-based framework for Colorado River operations. Just because reclamation is setting out a 2-year incremental approach doesn't mean we can't come to an agreement in those first 2 years that will, supplant all this and provide for the more durable framework that we've all been seeking. And I'm really hoping we can work towards that. And everything that we learn in this near-term contribution program effort will help inform what might come next. So if we're looking at setting up a more durable long-term contribution program, we're really hoping that things that we learn in the next 2 years could help inform that down the road. So that's kind of the farther out view that we're thinking about through all of this as well. That's everything I had, and I'm happy to take any questions folks might have.
Thanks, Amy. Questions for Amy? And thanks, I saw Emily Zemek put that email address for anybody that has comments about the contribution program. I know they're really welcoming anybody's comments. Anybody
Thanks, Emily and Anna, they're always 2 steps ahead of me, so.
It's nice to have that good support team there. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I know you guys are working hard. I know I had the privilege of being able to participate in one of the work groups for the demand management. And what a very in-depth, thorough process that was. And I thought there was a lot of very good, thoughtful conversations in that and lessons that we can learn. I mean, I think the final session before COVID hit, I remember us delving into the question of equity of impacts across the state. And it's something that hadn't occurred to me, that I thought, wow, it's great that we're talking about this. So again, I encourage everybody to provide them input and thoughts, because that's what we need, is that very diverse perspective about the value, how it would impact you, how it would be beneficial, and what we could do to make it better. Because that's the whole goal, is to learn from all of our past efforts and make going forward better than what we've done in the past.
Thanks, Robert. Very good insight. And I just want to mention something I forgot, which is that we are going to be having a workshop at Water Congress about this as well. That's kind of late breaking news, and we don't have a lot of details yet. I think we just got on the schedule, but we'll be providing more information on that in the near term.
Great. James Henderson just put in the chat, any indication of how the Upper Basin will share the 100 million funding bucket?
That is still a discussion in progress. I'll just be open about that. We're still trying to work that out. We've been so focused on the post-26 NEPA stuff and the upstream initial unit agreements. We still have some important discussions in front of us, and that's one of them. So more information coming hopefully soon on that.
Yeah, it's tough when you have these deadlines and things move so quickly in your world. It really is amazing to me. But I appreciate your team's responsiveness to all that. Other questions for Amy? Well, I do appreciate you traveling the state, and I would reiterate to everybody that they're very responsive. So if you're in your community, you think it would be valuable for them to talk about this, that's what they want to do, to go out there and really interact with everybody. So don't hesitate to reach out to Amy. And if you can't get a hold of her, please feel free to reach out to us and we can make those connections.
Or Emily as well.
Yeah. Or Emily.
Don't hear from me. She's always a good bet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Safe travels. Your next stop. Great. Well, I see Chris Sturm turned on his camera. If there's no other questions for Amy, we'll turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Appreciate you having me. I have a presentation as well that I would like to share if I could get permission for that.
I'll get that for you. And then just in the chat, Amy and her team made a great presentation, very similar to what she just did here at our CWCB board meeting. And so I put that link that's posted on YouTube as well. And if you hit that link and then go to about the 4-hour, 10-minute mark, that's where their presentation starts.
And Chris, you should be able to share.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, hopefully you guys are seeing my screen. I could get a thumbs up on that.
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. So today I'm going to be talking about the CWCB's relationship with the NRCS Emergency Watershed Protection Program, which is a cost share program that the USDA NRCS has, um, often employed after fire to mitigate impacts of post-fire flooding and debris flows. We also partnered with the NRCS after the 2013 Front Range floods to recover from that effort. That was about a $70 million effort where the state partnered with the NRCS. So I'm going to do this presentation by talking a little bit about our Wildfire Ready Watersheds program, because that's the program that we use to partner with the NRCS. And out of the gate, I will say CWCB, we are not a disaster recovery agency. Um, that's not what we do day to day. We often get engaged after fire, which is a disaster. We get engaged before the post-fire floods, which isn't a disaster yet, but then they start happening pretty quickly. So we're in the mix in the pre-preparedness strategies, but we also get pulled in after the disaster to help strategize recovery. Our Wildfire Ready Watersheds program, though, is really focused on identifying our water resources and our communities and other critical infrastructure that are susceptible to post-wildfire impacts. We have a framework called a Wildfire Ready Action Plan. I have a slide that'll show those later, where a lot of local watershed groups and their stakeholders are planning for post-wildfire impacts before the fires even occur. But to kind of go back in time and see the inspiration behind this program was definitely the fires in 2020. The East Troublesome Fire, the second largest fire in Colorado history, burned in the fall of 2020. And we partnered with the NRCS, who was working with Grand County and the Northern District as their local sponsors to help them identify where are we going to have problems with flooding and debris flows after this fire. We did some modeling, some hydrologic and hydraulic modeling using the burn severity. As many of you know, hydrology after fire changes dramatically, especially if we see moderate to high burn severity. The soil tends to get hydrophobic, and so our runoff conditions change dramatically. Kind of the rough rule of thumb that we use is that a 2-year flow event after a particularly hot fire might look more like a 50-year flow event. So pretty dramatic changes on the landscape. So what you're seeing here on the left is the results of our modeling that was then intersected with values at risk. These are homes and other properties in or near the floodplain and water infrastructure. So that's municipal water intakes and delivery systems and agricultural infrastructure as well, diversions and ditches and other infrastructure. And we made this heat map for the NRCS, who employs what they call damage survey reports, DSRs, to go out in the field, look at areas that are likely to be impacted by these post-fire floods and strategize what types of mitigation activities they could do to protect those values at risk. Their damage survey reports have to show that the mitigation project itself costs less than the values at risk that need to be protected. Um, they used to do this kind of property by property, and that made it tough oftentimes to show that cost benefit. But by working with us, we're able to cluster these values at risk together and demonstrate that mitigation projects can be done to protect entire reaches of stream or that have multiple values at risk within them. And that helps a lot with these damage survey reports to show that the cost benefit is there. The NRCS, of course, takes a lot of interest in the local knowledge. The locals often lead these tours and say, hey, these are the places we need to go. We know there's going to be problem areas here. Our modeling oftentimes supports where the locals think there's going to be problems, but it also identifies areas that the locals don't have on their radar and helps the NRCS go to other places that have been omitted in local conversations. It's hard to know where all the problems are going to be. Um, just to give you an idea of what type of hazards we might see on the landscape, hill slope erosion is very common. Debris and mud flows that happen in existing drainage areas or new gullies as they start to form. We see a lot of water quality degradation. So a lot of projects that we do are for local municipalities to better understand when they should not be diverting water into their systems because the water quality is not good enough. We see a lot of activity in what we call our fluvial hazard zone. This is an area where we see a lot of riverine erosion and sedimentation in or near the floodplain. And then, of course, just regular flooding is a big problem as well. Lots of times, all these things happen at once. The values at risk that we look at, starting at the bottom, life and property is the biggest one, especially immediately after a fire. The NRCS has the Emergency Watershed Protection Program for short-term recovery needs and mitigation needs. They also have what they call an exigent phase of it, which happens right away, and they like to get those projects done in the first 10 to 30 days if they can to protect lives mostly.
Hey, how's it going?
Um,
What's called about the Table Mountain thing?
Somebody's off mute if they wouldn't mind
Yeah.
muting themselves.
Can you just send it to the people and let me know the right contact to send it to is? So something Eli did.
I'll try to get that taken care of.
Okay, I'll just forge ahead, Robert. Road crossings, another huge problem that we see after fire. A lot of our road crossings are undersized, especially as the hydrology changes. We see culverts fill with debris, bridge crossings fill with debris. This is where we see a lot of channel avulsion. So the channel will kind of jump out, or the river will jump out of its existing channel when these road crossings get plugged. It causes a lot of damage. Agricultural water infrastructure, of course, is one of our big values at risk, and we like to bring in data layers for that as well as our municipal water intakes, and then reservoirs and dams. We have a lot of jurisdictional dams in the state. Up until recently, we didn't even have a good GIS layer for the polygons of these reservoirs. We just had point layers that were on the dams themselves. So that was something that we were able to build that's been a very helpful data set as we look at pre-fire preparedness and post-fire protection strategies. And then, finally, our aquatic ecosystems are a value at risk too. We may have sensitive species or gold medal fisheries, things of that nature that are worthy of protection strategies. What does it look like? Kind of the gloom and doom. I don't like to focus on this too much, but it is helpful to see it. We have significant water quality impairments to our reservoirs, but we also lose storage space. I have seen decent sized portions of reservoirs fill completely with debris. And that can be very expensive to remove, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. They just have that loss in storage. Um, the upper right there, this is a home that was elevated above the 100-year floodplain. In highly energized systems, like in our mountainous terrain, or the interface in the foothills, that doesn't always matter. And that's where we have fluvial hazard zone mapping to understand how the river might move within the floodplain and have the energy to carve out ground beneath properties that are elevated above the 100-year floodplain. And then, of course, we see a lot of sediment deposition. So this bottom right here is a road that was sharing a corridor with a stream. The stream kind of took over the entire corridor there, and kind of adds insult to injury. There are a few houses up this road that had burned. There are a few houses that hadn't, but it certainly wasn't safe for the landowners to reoccupy those homes immediately after the fire. Um, at a statewide scale, we have looked at the susceptibility at a Huck 12 level. These are small watersheds. There's about 3,500 of them in the state. About 28% of them here are from the yellow to red, which is kind of on our radar for priorities to do some pre-fire planning so that we can be prepared for these post-fire hazards. And what you're looking at here is an aggregate of all the values at risk and an aggregate of all the potential post-fire hazards. So as you go from green to red, you're seeing higher presence of values at risk that are susceptible to post-fire hazards. Here's where we have wildfire ready action plans that are either complete or ongoing, led by local stakeholder groups. We just received an application for one in the Upper San Juan. Pretty excited to jump in and review that. We'll be making recommendations for funding to our board in September for that. The reason I bring this up is because if we have a fire that's burning within a wildfire ready action plan, we could really get the information to the NRCS a lot faster because we've already built the models. We've already assembled all the data that we need as far as value at risk and the likelihood of post-wildfire hazards, so that we could be pretty diligent about directing the NRCS to the areas of concern so they can do their damage survey reports pretty quickly. Unfortunately, some of our bigger fires this year are outside of these areas. So you can see down there in the southwest Colorado, we do not have a wildfire ready action plan for Ouray. We do not have one for the Aspen Acres fire. We do have one for the Ferris fire, and that has been helpful so far in identifying some values at risk. And there's a lot of aquatic resources at risk to post-fire flooding and debris flows in that fire's footprint. As many of you know, the native flow of the Dolores River stored in McPhee and is moved over to McElmo Creek. So there is some concern about some sensitive species of concern in the Dolores that are surviving in small pools right now, that a debris flow could completely fill those up and choke out their habitat. I will mention that we have done some debris flow modeling already for Ouray, for the Gold Mountain fire. Robert, I'm not sharing those maps right now. We shared them with the locals, but it's not something that we want the media to get a hold of right now and cause a panic. We did identify a few drainages that are very likely to have debris flows. The county's discussing that with their commissioners. There was on Sunday a debris flow in one of those creeks that shut down Highway 550 for a little bit. The storm event wasn't as bad as it could have been to really release a lot of material. I think they got that cleaned up quickly. But I think that is going to be an ongoing concern is debris over Highway 550 for a while after that fire. For the Aspen Acre fires, we're going to start doing some modeling this week. The NRCS is heading down there in a couple of weeks to start the damage survey report process, and has asked us to do the modeling so they know where they should be visiting in the field. We're also going to provide them with some people to help assist. I think they're going to have 3 different teams. That's a very big fire with a lot of values at risk in a very erosive geology. So I think it's going to be a bit of a long haul, the recovery effort down in that fire footprint. What do these projects look like? We have them under kind of 2 major headings, operational and physical. Sometimes go out to a site and see some values at risk. Oftentimes it's houses where there is just no physical solution. The amount of material that can come down will come down very quickly. It's very difficult to warn folks in time to leave once there's a precipitation event. Sometimes the warning is actually tied to a flood warning forecast, and that's as good as it can get. And that's a very scary situation. Those of you that were familiar with the Grizzly Creek fire on through Glenwood Canyon in 2020 know that the highway would get down would get shut down based on forecasts. Sometimes there would be debris flow, sometimes there wouldn't. It's not perfect. But the willingness to put people in harm's way is not great. And so you've got to be conservative when you're approaching this. Sometimes we can do warning systems that do alert homeowners of an impending flood and gives them a certain amount of time to get out. It's really nice when we can do physical actions to mitigate that. If we can improve conveyance, if we can improve infrastructure, if we could do riverscape projects that attenuate flood flows and debris above these values at risk, we want to look at that. And oftentimes that's what we could do when our value at risk is not lives at stake. So if it's a reservoir, there's a lot of options we could do in the watershed above it to attenuate that debris. Just wanted to give you guys a picture of Glenwood Canyon in 2020. This is the kind of debris that was coming down. And again, there was a lot of discussion of, what kind of physical actions can we do here? And in the end, none of them really seemed viable. And so it was just that warning system. And unfortunately, the highway had to be shut down for a couple of years after the fire. Project types. Now, a lot of these are things that can be done before fire, like prescribed burns and forest thinning. Those are the types of things that can mitigate burn severity. If the fire doesn't burn as hot, the hydrology doesn't change as much. The likelihood of debris flows decreases. There's still a little bit of that, but it's not as bad. After fire, we see a lot of efforts for warning systems, mulching and seeding is a strategy, sediment catchment areas, gully stabilization and wet meadow restoration are big strategies after fire and before fire because they serve multiple objectives. And then traditional flood protection, there's a lot of sandbagging around homes and properties as well that needs to be done for a few years. This is the last slide I have. I thought it was timely because we just had the 50-year anniversary of the Big Thompson flood, which was devastating for the state and the amount of lives lost. And then again in 2013, we had a Big Thompson flood along with a lot of other floods on the Front Range. And this is Highway 34 out of Loveland up to Estes Park. And in the 76 and 2013 flood, the highway occupied this outer meander area that you see here. And both times the river reclaimed the channel and the highway was lost. And this is a really important corridor to access Estes Park for a lot of different reasons, but life and safety and emergency services is a big part of it. So after the 2013 flood, the decision was made to spend, I believe, over 200 million here to blast this area out so that the highway could be elevated and the river could be given its corridor back. So there's a lot of innovative things that can be done before we see these post-fire floods or just normal floods. They cost a lot of money oftentimes. And so we as a society have to make these decisions. Are we willing to carry the risk? Have we seen enough repetitive damage in an area where we don't want to carry that risk anymore? And it's just a wonderful example of really solid decision making. We're likely to see another flood in the Big Thompson Canyon. There will be more damage. This is not an area that I'm worried about ever again. With that, Robert, I'll take some questions.
Thanks, Chris. In the chat, I did put the website link to your Wildfire Ready Watershed website.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, if anybody's interested. Yeah, the power of water. It's amazing how powerful water can be. Questions for Chris? Well, thanks, Chris, very much.
Looks like Holly has a
I
question.
think Holly.
Yeah, hi everyone. Holly Kirkpatrick with the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District. Chris, I don't really have a question for you, but did just want to speak a little bit to the Wildfire Ready Action Plan planning process and give a little update on some of the work that Upper Yampa has been doing on the Bear River Wildfire Ready Action Plan. That plan was completed in early 2025, and we have actually started some pre-fire projects this summer. I believe the second week of July, we started a fuels reduction project along the Stillwater Ditch near Yamcola Reservoir in the headwaters of the Yampa River Basin. So we are making some great progress on that fuels reduction project, protecting those critical water supplies. And we also have made some progress on a wet meadow restoration area that was identified in our Wildfire Ready Action Plan. This winter was so warm and dry that the original engineers, some beavers, kind of moved in and started doing that work for us. So we have a head start on a project that was identified for 2027. I'll put a couple of links in the chat here too, if you want to just check out some of the work that's going on up there. But just wanted to share too that the Steamboat Front wrap just was completed, I believe, at the end of last month, maybe a little earlier this month. So another Wildfire Ready Action Plan in place in Northwest Colorado, and we're making some progress on identifying funding streams for fuels reduction projects identified in that plan as well. So having a lot of success here in the Yampa Basin. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. And Robert, if I may, there was just a couple more points I wanted to bring up with the group, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
One is that during and immediately after the fires, we get contacted by a lot of people, and by we, I mean CWCB and the NRCS. And it seems the question is always, what money do you guys have for us, and when can we get it? Which is really not a helpful question. The real question should be, when can you guys come down and start assessing our susceptibility to post-fire hazards? We like to send technical expertise first. It's really, really hard to understand the amount of money that's going to be needed before we do this modeling to intersect the values at risk with the hazards. There's a lot of debris flows that occur with no values at risk in the area. So that's not really something we need to focus on. It's just something that's going to happen. So this was something that I discussed with Dan Gibbs way back in 2020 and said, and it was the impetus of the Wildfire Ready Watershed Program, and was that we're going to provide technical assistance first so that the locals can understand what they're going to need and start coming up with cost estimates for those projects. And that's what we're doing. And then finally, a really close nexus with agriculture is that a lot of the mitigation projects that we identify to protect values at risk are on agricultural lands. And it is very difficult to come up with agreements with operators during a disaster. Nobody likes to be forced into a knee-jerk decision, and that's why the pre-fire preparedness is really important. A lot of our channel and floodplain restoration opportunities where we can attenuate flood flows and store debris, those opportunities are on agricultural lands in a lot of instances. And experience has taught me that it's not a good strategy to try to force that after an event. It takes time to develop those relationships with the operators and really discuss what value they get out of it, even if a group's bringing all the funding to the table. So those are my final points. Thank you, Robert.
Great, Chris. Yeah, those are great points. And so if there's any ways that we can, at the Department of Ag, help facilitate those discussions, we're happy to do so in the future. So
thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Chris? Not, Anna, provide us an update on the diversion measurement program.
Thanks. Okay. Y'all see my screen?
It's loading. There we go.
Okay. Let me know if I'm moving too fast for the screen change, if you would. So thanks for having me today. I'm Anna Ryken, the Colorado River Technical Specialist in the Interstate Federal and Water Information section of the CWCB. So I'm just here to give a brief overview and a brief update on the Diversion Measurement Installation Program, what we're calling DMIP, and that's being implemented throughout the West Slope. If I can get it to go, there we go. So I know many of you are probably familiar with this program at this point, but I just want to start with some background. So in 2024, the Bureau of Reclamation, acting through the Upper Colorado River Commission, authorized $7 million from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, for improved diversion measurement in Colorado. This is part of a total of $50 million allocated to the Upper Basin to build infrastructure to implement the 2019 drought contingency plans. So at the same time, DWR is implementing rulemaking on the West Slope, as you all know, mandating diversion measurement. And so the status of that rulemaking varies by division. So it's complete in divisions 6 and 7, the Yampa White and the San Juan Dolores, and then it's still being developed in 4 and 5, the Gunnison and the Colorado Main Stem. So funds for the DMIP program are available through 2029, and they cover the materials and installation of a diversion measurement structure, such as a flume, a weir, or a meter with no match requirement. This funding is only available for water users in the Colorado River Basin and its tributaries. And we have earmarked 25% of the funding for each division, so 4, 5, 6, and 7. In the fall of 2025, we opened applications to Division 6 and 7 and used criteria to score those applications. And the CWCB is administering the program with assistance and review from DWR. And then we've also hired the Glenwood Springs-based contractor SGM for assistance as well. So prior to the start of the program, we performed a needs assessment with DWR and found that there are 2,802 active diversions without measurement on the West Slope that are greater than 1 CFS. And they meet as well as meeting the DWR measurement rule criteria. But most of those structures are small, with 65% of them being less than 3 CFS. And diversion measurements are currently estimated by DWR for those sites by water commissioners when they make those irregular site visits. And so here, just a lineup of flumes that are flooded, rusty, bent, look like they may have been run over with a tractor, that we're replacing in the first round of the DMIP program this year. So the DMIP program started in earnest last fall with the hiring of our contractor SGM and round 1 basin information meetings in Division 6 and 7. And then applications were accepted and evaluated over the winter. And since this is using federal funds, a NEPA process is required for each project. And so that process is ongoing, but I'll talk about that in a few slides about where we are with that at this point. Design and site visits are also ongoing, but I think we have almost all site designs complete and almost all site visits done as well. And then installations are expected a little bit later this summer, and then early fall. And then this fall and winter, we'll start round 2 in divisions 4 and 5, and that will basically mirror the round 1 timeline. And so we were pleased to receive 190 total applications in Division 6 and 7. Of those, we selected 66 applications in Division 6, the Yampa White, and 60 in Division 7, the San Juan Dolores. And of those, 13 are on federal land and 3 are on tribal land or are tribal projects. So those require a little bit extra coordination and or NEPA processes. And so the applications in Division 6 spanned the Yampa, Elk, and White Rivers with pretty good representation around the basin. It was encouraging. And then the same thing in Division 7, they span the Upper Dolores, Mancos, La Plata, Pine, Pedro, Navajo, and San Juan. As mentioned, the distribution of federal funding initiates a NEPA process for these projects. So Colorado has submitted documentation for all 126 of our round 1 projects. We've received 82 categorical exclusions for prefabricated devices on private lands, and we're still awaiting approval for projects on federal land as well as some custom structures. But so far this is moving really smoothly and we don't kind of foresee any more issues with these. So along with our consultant SGM, we're also utilizing measurement device manufacturers and vendors and subcontractors to install the devices. So we released actually 2 bid packages to pre-qualified subcontractors, and we're releasing our first installer package hopefully next week or the end of this week. And we received multiple responses. And then SGM has completed all project designs. I think they finished up site visits last week. Finishing those designs, and then we're estimating that installations should be complete by the end of October, hopefully before we get a big snow coming in. And so here's just an example of design specs for one of our projects. And so with round 1 progressing into the hands of subcontractors, the CWCB, we've started preparations for round 2 in divisions 4 and 5. So our website has a statement of interest form that allows water users to receive updates. And we already have about 20 plus forms in divisions 4 and 5. And then like in round 1, we'll hold in-person meetings in September and early October in divisions 4 and 5, hopefully 2 in-person meetings in each division. And then finally, we'll also increase outreach through flyers, through the division engineers and water commissioners who have been really helpful throughout this whole process. And then we also hope to see as healthy of an application pool as we did in round 1. So here's the best place to get information on the DMIT program, which is cwcb.colorado.gov/diversion measurement. And so both water users and subcontractors have used the site to get information, fill out applications. We have kind of an overall timeline. We've got some frequently asked questions on that website, but that's the place to get kind of updated information about the program. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Anna. I put a link in the chat for that website for anybody.
Great.
So that'll make it easy for everybody to get. Any questions for Anna? I had a question, Anna, is availability of prefab flumes. Has anybody run into problems of availability for those, or is it pretty good supply?
Yeah, we have not run into that yet. I think the way that we are kind of spacing doing divisions, not all at the same time, that we've got 2 divisions going and then 2 more going next year. I think we're okay so far.
Okay, that's great. Because the reason I asked, because I know CSU Extension was working, with 3D printers to print these.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to them and went, how expensive it is it to make those? And the question they had for me, which I didn't know, is what's the typical range of sizes that these flumes have the carrying capacity for them?
Yeah, we have, I think, and this is probably more of an SGM question, but I know that I've seen kind of 12-inch to 18-inch up to 36-inch, but those are more rare. I think it's kind of normally the 12 to 18-inch flumes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's something we might keep in mind if for some reason supply gets short, then really like to engage with them to see, because I've asked them about durability of 3D printing. It sounds like they have some pretty good materials that they can put together on some of these. It'd be kind of cool to use.
Yeah, we've talked to Perry a little bit about it. in the past, and just getting that, seeing if we can do a couple test cases. It's always hard with kind of procurement rules and things with the state, so we got to kind of figure that out. But yeah, it'd be cool to get some in.
Plus, it could be because this ARPA money will, of course, run out eventually. So it'd be nice maybe to have something more long-term that if we can invest in a 3D printer and then just materials for it, it might be helpful in the long term.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions for Anna? Well, great. There's a lot of information on the website about that program. So I hope people in need of measuring devices will really engage in that process. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. All right, this time slot is just for open updates from people, individuals. So what's going on in their neighborhood? I know Holly, you jumped in earlier. Is there anything else you want to give us an update? I know the Yampa Valley is really struggling this year, so appreciate updates and what's going on in your areas.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I'm happy to provide a brief update. Again, Holly Kirkpatrick with the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District. We own and operate 2 reservoirs, Yamcolo and Stagecoach Reservoir, near the headwaters of the Yampa River. So we're in the Upper Yampa Basin in Routt County. And Yamcolo Reservoir up at the headwaters of the Bear River filled to about 60% this year. So all of our ag water contracts out of Yamcolo, it is primarily contracted for agriculture. All of those contracts were abated to 60% as well this year. So those producers received about 60% of their water, most of which has been delivered by now. So irrigation season in South Routt is pretty much over at this point. We had historical low inflows to Stagecoach Reservoir. Our peak inflow at Stagecoach was around 40 CFS in early March. So we were only able to store about 640 acre feet in Stagecoach this year. We've been making operational releases to support a fishery just downstream of the reservoir since April. And we have environmental releases coming out of the reservoir with a contract through the Colorado Water Trust currently that is supporting flows through an in-stream flow reach with the CWCB just downstream of the reservoir and supporting flows much further downstream. We are seeing some fish kills, unfortunately, as well. So these really record high temperatures have just been devastating to the Yampa recently.
Yeah, I've heard that stream temperatures are extremely high this year with such low flows.
Yeah, I think they were taking readings of 85 degrees in the river near Steamboat Springs.
Yeah. And I know, Holly, in the past you've had some problems with algal blooms on the reservoirs. So has that also been an issue this year with high temperatures and low flows?
Surprisingly, we were just starting to see the first signs of algal blooms in Stagecoach Reservoir. We do have an enhanced water quality monitoring program there, and we are finalizing a water quality model for the Upper Yampa watershed. So we do water quality monitoring in 11 sites throughout the Upper Basin, and then we also have an in-reservoir enhanced water quality monitoring program. So we take water samples monthly in the reservoir, and we are starting to build out an in-reservoir water quality model as well, just to kind of look at all of those inputs. We do anticipate some water quality issues to come up this year, just when there's less water in the system. There's not as much water to dilute what's coming in.
Yeah, I've talked to people that all that metadata that's associated with water quality testing is really important, because I think we need to put an asterisk by all the data collected this year that the flows are so low, that what the impacts are of low flows.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have a soil moisture monitoring network that we are expanding throughout the Yampa Basin. So we have 3 years of soil moisture data collection from a monitoring site just above Stagecoach Reservoir. So that's been helpful. And I think having that continued data collection to look at soil moisture throughout the basin will help us with inflow forecasting as well moving forward. But certainly some alarming data sets this year.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Holly. Thanks for that update. Anybody else with any updates? I know, I think on my written report, I mentioned it that really thanks to the farm organizations that are stepping up with all the responses, especially the wildfire. Colorado Farm Bureau is a great partner, Buckland Farmers Union, been really important in their being partners in our responses to help the ag industry. So thanks so much for that. Tara.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you had mentioned just briefly that you went to a meeting and learned some challenges and opportunities for data centers, and I just wondered if you could expand on that at all?
Yeah, I think it's a common challenge that everybody's trying to deal with is just the demand for energy and water that they take. It's interesting from the legislative perspective, the state legislators, how they're approaching it, whether it's putting restrictions on, but some states have put moratoriums on. Some are really trying to figure out ways for local counties, just like our 1041 regulations that we have in Colorado. But those programs have to be, of course, in place before an entity proposes a project. So it's important to be proactive in that area. So it seems like it's really dependent on the area and the community of what's going on. Some are welcoming them because of the potential income to the local entity. But others, again, are weighing those with the potential impacts to the communities, which I think is becoming more apparent. I don't think in the past people were as aware of the potential energy demand, and again, depending on the cooling, how they're doing the cooling, the water demand on the communities. But I think information is really going out there. So,
And who actually was doing the updates or giving the information?
yeah, so there were legislative program staff that were giving that there, and then also different companies that are providing AI services. So it was really interesting. One of them, I can't remember the name of the company that, is doing these automated telephone answering systems essentially. So you're never talking to a person, you're talking to AI, and just showing the value of that in serving. They were promoting that as a way to better serve the public because of more responsive, quick answer times. And yet, I know personally, this is my personal view and not those of the Department of Ag or this administration, is that I like talking to a person. Sorry.
I couldn't agree with you more, Robert.
So it's interesting, but I'm old school. There's probably a lot of younger generation that prefer to just to, text or interact that way because they're used to that interaction. So,
well,
Tara,
thank you.
thanks. I know I was down in the valley quite a bit. Really thanks to all the work that you guys are doing there. I know it's a really tough year for potato producers this past year when the market was just in the tank and disposing of potatoes was such a huge issue. And then I know the trial just ended for Sub-District 1 down there. Interesting what will happen down there, and really want to be supportive of the industry down there. I attended the Ruby Cafe, the breakfast down there to support the community. It was really neat to see that effort where, it was just an open event where I think Jocelyn Catterson down there was encouraging the public to join in and paint. Everybody got to paint a mural. It was paint by numbers. And again, just to engage in the community and just see the support there was really great. So thanks. James Henderson, good to see you.
Good to see you, Robert. I just wanted to provide an update that I've started hearing this last week from the south end of the valley. We're starting to see some domestic wells go dry. It's a concerning trend. If it kind of starts matching the 2002, we saw a huge need for re-drills for domestic and that kind of thing. I'll kind of keep an eye on that. I know of one irrigation well that's also gone dry. Some of that can be overcome by lowering bowls and pumps and stuff. But just wanted to put it on your radar, just in case it starts becoming kind of epidemic like it was in 2002.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Yeah, please keep up to date on that, and we'll figure out what resources are available to help those. Because I know on domestic wells, there's probably more resources available than there are for irrigation wells, but happy to connect. Thanks. And again, thanks to everything Farm Bureau is doing to really help support on the wildfire side. Really much appreciated. Anybody else with updates for the area? I know Jake Nemmers was on earlier. He messaged me that he was on the road. He's with Senator Hickenlooper's office and he had to drop off. But I don't know, is Patrick Ortiz still on or did he drop off as well?
Robert, we got a question about the real-time hay directory on the CDA website.
Oh, great.
I dropped the link in the chat. That is active, or they're collecting listings right now. I'm not sure what time they plan to post the 2026 one, but we'll keep you all updated and we'll send out any information we have.
Great. Thanks, Marissa. Thanks for that question. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of need for supplemental feed, so that'll be important. And then also as a reminder too, it's just so important in all of our communities to support local ag this year. There's going to be a lot less product that producers are able to produce, so really directly supporting them by purchasing the wonderful Colorado products we have is going to be really critical this year. Great. Any other updates from anybody you'd like to share? We appreciate everybody's updates. Hearing none, I think we'll adjourn the meeting then. Thanks so much for everybody for your participation. And again, reminder, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Marissa for anything that we can be doing at the Department of Ag. You all have a great rest of your day and take care, and we'll send out meeting notices for our next meeting. Bye, everybody.